we're going to start our yin practice today with a little bit of breath work and a little bit of work actually into our feet as well. Maybe you've been doing a little extra walking these days outside just to get out and about. So you're going to take the top of your left foot and put it on the sole of your right foot. So the kind of the bony part of that foot takes maybe just a little bit into the arch of that right foot. A little pressure in there. If it's super uncomfortable, obviously you skip it. You sit however you're most comfortable. And then you can take the first finger and the middle finger and place it to the pad of your thumb with that right hand. Left hand can do whatever feels natural and comfortable, looking down to the ground or closing the eyes. And we're just going to start by gently plugging the left nostril right underneath the bone there. Just soft, gentle pressure. Inhale through that right nostril. And then you'll plug the right nostril and exhale out through the left. And then we'll continue in that pattern, in through the right, out through the left. In right, out left, in right, out left. Doesn't have to be super deep. In right, out left. Just that natural breath in and out. Continuing through that right nostril and out the left. 3 more rounds. And after that 3rd round, you'll go ahead and take that right hand, place it onto the lap. And again, you can just downcast or close the eyes and take a few moments, just let everything settle. Notice whatever it is that you notice. And then shifting the weight forward, maybe a little tap out of the feet if you need it. And then you'll switch so that that right foot is gently pressing into the arch of that left foot, sitting back. Again, if it's super uncomfortable, skip it. Going back to that mudra with the right hand, this time we're going to alternate the opposite way. So you'll gently press into the right nostril to begin. Inhale through the left. Gently press into that left nostril as you exhale through the right. Inhaling left, exhaling right. Inhale left, exhale right, and left, out right. Again, natural breath, in left, out right, inhaling left, exhaling right, inhale left, exhale right, in left, out right. As before, continuing these last 3 rounds at your rhythm and pace. After finishing that last round, releasing your right hand down to the lap, onto the knees, again, whatever feels natural. Eyes can downcast or close. Taking a couple of breaths. Working through neutralizing balance of that energy in the body. And then shifting your weight forward, again, you can tap out the feet a little bit. And then everyone's favorite, we're going to find broken toe pose. So curling the toes underneath. So you can see that the balls of the feet are really getting a lot of that pressure. Again, if it's too much, you skip it. And then the hips can sit back on those heels. If that's a little much, you can lift up and out of it. You can release it at any point in time that you need to through this process. And now going into our full alternate nostril breathing, again, finding that mudra. Gently pressing through the left nostril, inhaling through the right. Exhaling through that left nostril. Inhaling now through that left nostril. Plugging in and exhaling out through the right. So maybe thinking of a ping pong coming up and over the arch and the bridge of the nose. Inhaling right and then exhaling left. Inhaling left, exhaling right. Again, inhale right, exhale left, in left, out right, in right, out left. In left, out right, in right, out left. Continuing again at your pace. 3 more rounds. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 1 I'm not so concerned about how deep, how full the breath is. Just envisioning that breath as a way to cleanse, to clear the pathways in the body, and to set the tone. So continue the round that you're on, and then finish one more round. Finishing by exhaling through that right nostril. Right hand comes down. You can hold it for another breath or two. And this is the one where usually the feet really start to scream at you a little bit. So very gently tapping out through the tops of the feet. And then sitting back on the heels for just a moment. And the eyes, one more time, downcast or closed, and just notice the breath flowing in and out. And perhaps after that first cleansing process, kind of like the windshield wipers clearing out our windshield, we can see with a little more clarity what is it that we need from our practice today. We're kind of working our way through the body from the ground up through the Yin practice. We did a lot with the feet. We're going to move a little bit more into the ankles with our first posture, coming into dragon. So that left leg will be back behind you, right foot comes forward. So know that you're more than welcome to add a blanket, double up a mat underneath the knee. Maybe you're on carpet, so you don't have to worry so much about a hard surface. But taking that right foot forward in a little bit of a shorter stance so that the knee can actually start to travel a bit past the toes. And if your heels pops up, that's fine as long as you feel stable. And then the hands can stay on the ground. You can bring the hands up onto maybe a couple cans or a couple water bottles if you don't have blocks, or you can bring your forearms onto that thigh and then maybe lean into it a little bit. You can lift the torso and take some of the weight out of it. The idea here is that you're going to feel some sensation into the ankle. I'm just going to start our little timer here. So breathing into that ankle, some of you might feel a little more sensation in the front of the ankle. And that means that we're kind of getting into that compression point in the bone. Some of you might feel it more in the back of the ankle, in the Achilles tendon, into the muscle of the calves. So knowing that you might feel it a little differently from side to side or day to day. And really we're just working into that space of comfortable challenge on either end of the spectrum, whether you're feeling it on the front of the ankle or the back of the ankle with more of that tensile compression. And just breathing into it. Some sensation there. Noticing again what you notice. And after a few moments of being in the posture, you might start to pay attention to some other areas in the body as well. How is this affecting everywhere? Right? Everything's connected. Knowing whether you feel that compression point in the front, you've kind of dropped into a little bit more of bones, of end range of motion, or if we're still working on some of that soft tissue in the back, it at the end of the day doesn't really matter. It's the process that's important. Our yoga practice is never about how deep or how far we go in any of our poses. It's about the journey, truly. Learning about ourselves, learning about the world around us, through that journey inward, as we're all connected. Another breath or two here into the pose. Noticing how things have maybe shifted a bit for you. And if the hands are up on the thigh, you can bring them down to the ground. My suggestion for the exit is to just gently press with the arms around the spine a little bit so the core helps release the weight out of that ankle. And then maybe just a pause. And maybe some soft oscillations into the foot. How you release doesn't matter as long as you're doing it mindfully and gently. And then eventually you can take that leg back, moving into maybe a table pose. Leg can extend back behind you, some gentle ankle circles. Again, whatever it is that you feel like you need. Just nice and gentle. We'll be alternating from side to side through these poses. So we're going to go through 3 poses in our dragon series. So switching over to that first dragon on the left, that left foot comes forward. Again, journey into the pose with a couple of wiggles and shifts. Breathing into the ankle. And again, the side might be a little bit different. Always trying to enter into the second side of our body with as little expectation as possible, so that one side doesn't end up being our good side, the other side our quote-unquote bad side. See if you can start to feel your way into those sensations between muscle, fascia, soft tissue, and then into the bones, into the joints. That's one of the fun things about this style of practice, is we get to explore through the time held in a different way than we do in our yang practices, when we're continuously moving and trying to flow from one pose to the next and balance. And with these longer holds, we have the opportunity to learn a bit about impermanence. Again, the sensation you feel when you first move into the pose might be a bit different by the time you exit the pose. It's all part of the fun and the process. Again, if the hands are lifted, you can bring them down to the ground, getting a little support through the upper body, and then very gently pushing the floor away, rounding through the spine, shifting the weight out of that left ankle, pausing for a moment, just allowing that reverberation of the posture to occur. Sometimes on the exit, we get more information, and then any little movements that you feel like you need, go for it. Little wiggles, just letting the blood flow maybe into those spaces where it got a little bit cut off, compressed. And leg can go back behind you in that table. No have to's, just however you feel like you need to release. Just keep it gentle, light. And then from here, we're going into what we call twisted dragon. So for me personally, I like to just step that right foot wide of my hand. However you want to get there, the leg is going to go a little bit of a longer stance than where you were in the last one. And I brought a couple things out you can start to use for props if you want. You can always have a blanket available. A firmer blanket's always great. A pillow, and then just a nice little empty box can be nice as well, as something to elevate you again if you don't have that block available to you. You can start to get creative here, right? That old phone book. So maybe the forearm starts to come down to the ground, and as the name indicated, we're going to find a little bit of a twist. Starting to turn your chest towards that right leg. You can have your right hand down on the ground. You can take that right arm and just drape it over that right thigh and let it fall behind you. You can also bend into that left elbow and support the head. You might wing your dragon a bit and let the knee drop open and roll more to the outer edge of the foot. All of this is okay. So we take a few moments to adjust. And again, if you have done these kind of postures before, it's easy to settle into expectation and habit. So try to feel your way in. And once you find that space where you're like, yep, that's the sweet spot, then just let yourself be. Moving from the ankle now more into the hips. And for some of you, sensationally, this might be a little bit more in the right hip, but for others of you, it might actually be in the front of that left hip and the left hip flexors. Either way is fine. Breathe across the pelvis. And again, just observe. Slowly starting to unwind the spine, coming back up onto the hands and using the arms just a bit to shift the weight out of the hips. Again, you can pause, find that shape where it feels maybe like that release is starting to happen. And then whenever your body indicates it's a good time, a little bit of soft movement, a gentle yang to release out of that yin might be in order. So you go ahead and find those movements, and then you'll take that right leg back behind you again. If you want to extend it out, move it around a little bit, go for it. And then pausing for a moment in neutral as you switch over to the other side. Again, however you get into the second side and whatever shape that second side is needed for your body is totally awesome. Letting yourself sink down. Find that little rotation. Add in the twist in whatever way feels right for you. Again, the upper body might want different things on this side as well. Totally honor that. Breathing into your body and into the moment at hand. So easy for us to get pulled with our beautiful brains of ours into the past, into the future, worries, concerns, ruminations. Really, this becomes a practice of being present, the gift of here and now, even if it's maybe a little uncomfortable, a little challenging. And we all know that we're definitely in challenging, uncomfortable times right now. We're just becoming more adept at finding the stillness. Knowing that it's perfectly fine to make adjustments if you need to, especially if you're not supporting the head and you need to move the head around to keep the neck happy. We try to find as much stillness in the area that we're working into, just so that we can really access the fascial tissue. Slowly starting to unwind. Come back up onto the hands again, pushing through them, a little rounding maybe of the spine as you get out of those hips for just a moment. Pausing. And then whatever movements you need to exit, go for it. Eventually we'll make our way back into that more neutral tabletop position. And then we'll be going into what we might think of as lizard. Otherwise you can think of this as its more specific lizard name, gecko. Sorry for my grandfather clock. So right foot's gonna step forward. And this is going to be the biggest step forward that you can possibly take. You can keep both hands on the inside of the foot. You can be up on the hands. You can start to work your way down onto the forearms, right? As we said earlier, you're more than welcome to find some things to put those forearms up on if that feels a little bit more appropriate for you. No, the biggest step you can possibly take is starting to sink down towards those splits. So if that's something that speaks to you, you're more than welcome to do that as well. So whatever variation of this gecko pose is calling to you today, you're gonna go ahead and find that. And then breathe into the hips, into the hamstrings perhaps, softening in, recognizing maybe how much more vacuuming you should be doing in your home as you see the dog hair on your pants. But breathing. Most important part of this. Doesn't have to be any particular breath pattern. There's areas in the body that might talk to you a little bit more in the beginning, but they might start to quiet, and you might start to hear those subtler voices. You might start to feel your way into intersection points just a bit more. Remembering again, there's no have to, there's no better version of any of these poses, just the best one for you today. Once again, if you're down on the forearms, starting to make your way back up onto the hands, very gently, mindfully, starting to work your way out of the posture. Whatever movements you feel like you need, you go ahead and take them. Eventually, you'll bring yourself back into a nice, easy, neutral tabletop position. How you release is totally up to you. And then last one, stepping that left foot forward, again coming into that lizard or gecko pose, as we like to call it in yin. Sinking down, finding that biggest lunge and just letting the torso sink to the earth. If it feels good in your body to start to work yourself towards, again, more of that extension through that left leg, go for it. Any support system that you feel like you need with pillows, blankets, again, feel free to take it. Again, sides will be different. So you breathe into those differences with as little judgment as possible. And then if you find yourself judging, you try not to judge yourself for judging, right? Recognizing that you're human. And that it's easy for us to grab onto those external markers of something being better or worse. And just letting yourself sink in. Noticing if there's other areas in the body in which you're holding tension, jaw, forehead, shoulders. See what you can do to maybe dissipate a little bit of that holding. And just welcoming in fluidity, spaciousness through that breath. Starting to slowly make your way out of that pose and finding that still point wherever that might be for you. And it might be going right back into that table position. Maybe it's a child's pose. Eventually we'll take that left leg back behind. Again, feel free to shake it out a little bit there. You can always, once again, find a little neutrality in a child's pose, a couple cat-cows. You can always pause and take it extra time if you need. And eventually we're going to make our way onto our bottoms and working a little bit more into hips and then into spine in the next couple of postures. We're going to work them side to side. So if you don't have a pillow already, I do recommend having a pillow for our next one. You might end up using some of the other props as well. I'm coming into that deer posture. So the right shin is going to be out in front. That left leg will tuck back and You can of course adjust as you need to. We're all going to look different in these poses. We're looking to get the outer hip similar to what we would for like a pigeon pose. So shin relative parallel if you were using a mat to the top of the mat. And then I always suggest coming down through the center first and just kind of testing the water. So if this is already feeling really intense, then if you turn yourself a little bit more towards the knee, you might find that you can settle into it without overdoing it in the joints. If you feel like this is a great sweet spot for you, then again, you just lower down to wherever you feel like you can. If you feel like you need a little bit more to access into that hip, then you can turn more towards the foot. And then you can also adjust by moving that left leg around back behind you. So once you find that spot where you're on the outer right hip, again, similar to sensations you might feel in a pigeon pose, but keeping it out of the right knee, then go ahead and just allow yourself to sink in. So these we're gonna hold a little bit longer than the last couple postures we did. So if you need to support the head, sometimes that can be, again, a really nice thing to do just for the neck. So you can always, if you had a block, you use a block, or again, find something like random in your house. Pillow might be a little squishy, but if it's at a right height for you, you can always, again, support with that pillow, or hands, right? Nature has given us a lot of dexterity here, so you can always use your hands, your thumbs, as you sink down. Kind of touched on it a bit earlier, but in this style of practice, we're working your way into the fascial tissue. And fascial tissue is a little different than the muscles of the body. So with the muscles of the body, they're much more elastic. And so we get into the muscles perhaps a little bit more when we're accessing through more of that yang style practice. Here in our yang practice, we still, of course, are going to touch into that muscle tissue, but then as we settle in after a minute, 2 minutes, we're going to really start to tap into that more plastic tissue that helps connect muscles to bones, that wraps around the muscle fibers, that wraps around big muscle bundles, the muscles themselves, and then kind of helps keep everything contained and held together. So this interwoven web around our body, and because it's a little bit more plastic and less elastic, two things. As we stress into that tissue, we help the collagen fibers learn how to lay down, which helps create some stability within that tissue. But then we also are helping maintain the right amount of fluidity, because we need it for structure, so we don't want it to be too elastic. And so perhaps starting to see if you can shift the awareness and feel when you tap into that fascial tissue as opposed to the muscles. Remembering it's not important how you're breathing, but that you're breathing. So you find that you're holding your breath. So just come back to that simple flow in and out. And slowly starting to lift the torso up. Coming to that tall spine. And then we're going to go directly into our second posture. So if you do have body pillows, can be great use for bolsters. If you have one, or any pillow will do, you can put it off by your right head. And then we're working a little bit more into the spine on this one as we go into a twist. So turning your chest towards the pillow, you lower yourself down, and then know that you're more than welcome to again adjust the legs and the arms. So for this one, you might kick that left foot back behind you a bit more. You might choose to straighten that right foot out. You might open the arms out more like a T. You can even catch a hold of the foot, not to pull it anywhere, but just kind of keep it in place. So wherever you feel like your body wants to go into this twist, go ahead and find that. You might notice that this posture feels a little bit more relaxing than the last one for many of us, as that spine and this rotation is maybe just something we do a little bit more. Extending the leg out will perhaps access some of that fascial tissue, things connected to the IT band, so that can sometimes be a little bit of an area of, we'll say, tension for many of us. So again, finding the position that works best for you, and then once you find it, just giving yourself permission to be. Not having to strive, not having to push, just letting yourself be. Working into the fascial tissue is a bit like orthodontics. If you want to move the teeth, you don't just grab pliers and adjust them. We take time, pressure, and through that duration, gravity, and holding, we create change. This is the same way that we access our body through our yin practice. Feeling your way into gravity, letting your body just sink. And if those ideas start to wash through the mind of have-tos or shoulds, say thank you for the input. Reminding yourself that once again, you can just simply be. Especially during these times when really maybe only our families or pets or our interaction with the outside world, it's perhaps a little bit easier for us to let ourselves simply be, to worry less about externals. So trying to find the glass half full, looking at the things that we can be grateful for in these more challenging times. And if that right leg is extended out, maybe start to soften into that knee a bit here. If the arms are extended out, bending into them. Gently pressing into the earth, starting to lift the torso up, nice and gentle and slow. And then turning once you get up tall. Again, letting yourself just rest a few moments, however long you need. And then once you feel like you've had, again, that moment for the waters to calm, shifting the weight over to that right hip to help that left leg around. You can always use your hands, legs out in front of you, hands back behind you, lifting through the chest, maybe a little windshield wiper of the legs. And then we're going to find those two same postures on the second side. So whenever you feel like you've released out that first side enough, you can move your stuff over to the other side, prepare. And again, sides will be different. So we don't want to go in with expectations of, oh, I did this on the other side, so I have to go there on this side. And we feel our way in. So finding that zigzag position to start off with the legs, lowering down to the center. Again, if you need a little less, you dial it over towards the knee. If you need a little bit more, you dial it over towards the foot. Breathing into that left outer hip and then coming down towards the earth as far as it feels comfortable. Right leg can always find it's a little bit of shift as well. Again, sides might be very, very different. Sometimes it's just a subtle difference that we might not really necessarily notice all that much. But none of us are built 100% symmetrically, and we don't use our bodies symmetrically. So sometimes to actually bring balance into our bodies, we have to practice asymmetrically. So letting yourself find your space and then just breathing. Knowing that, again, wherever you land today is just this moment. There has never been this moment, and there will never be this moment again. So instead of always needing to change it or fix it, make it better, it can alleviate a lot of our suffering in life if we can allow ourselves to just let the moment be. If we think of the lines in the body, whether it be circulatory, nervous, or energetic, kind of these vessels working like garden hoses. And as we live, there's buildup that starts to happen. And so through this practice, we can put some compression into spaces, block off the flow for a moment, and then when we release, the floodgates open and everything starts to wash itself clear. And then everything flows just a little bit more smoothly. So whatever your personal belief system is, breathing into that idea of whether it's just purely the physical or, again, perhaps that energetic aspect of the body, just starting to allow some movement, some space, the clearing away of the clutter, the chaos. If there are areas of the body in which you're containing a little extra tension, once again, perhaps you envision your breath untying those areas like little bows on a present. Starting to lift yourself back up to more of that neutral position with the torso. Again, if you need a moment before you move on, feel free to take it. Otherwise, you're going to just start to switch right away into that next posture, turning your torso towards your pillow, lowering yourself down, feeling free to extend that left leg out. Tuck that right leg back behind you a bit more. Finding that twist through the spine. Breathing into the spine. And thinking about that rotation perhaps as that idea of wringing out. As we move our spine in all these different directions, we help keep those discs in between the vertebrae nice and healthy and happy. Good spinal health. Twist also very good for digestion and that physical process of elimination. And two, again, this is great for that energetic release, digestion of life. Perhaps you found in the last week or two a little bit more time for that process of digesting what's happening in life. Maybe you're still a bit amongst the chaos. Wherever you are in that spectrum, knowing that, again, it's okay. But that our yin practice can be that time to let life move through us. So as we awaken next day, we're a little lighter, a little less baggage. And also knowing that it's okay if you're not quite ready to let go of things, if you're not quite ready to let things process yet. Trusting your body, your mind, and your spirit's intuition. Just as we entrust our digestive system to process the food that we eat. Try to micromanage and say, okay, small intestine, now it's your turn. Just let it be. Again, if that left leg is straightened out a bit, maybe beginning by just simply bending that knee for a breath or two. And then coming up onto the hands, starting to lift the torso up. Once you start to lift, turning the chest to face forward, letting that reverberation happen. And you can shift the weight a little bit more to the left, maybe helping with the hand, that right leg around. Again, whatever movements you need. I'm a big fan of the windshield wiper, but whatever you need is great. Both legs out for a moment, just kind of swaying a little bit. And then Setting up for this last pose, we're gonna maybe get again a little creative in what you stack beneath you. You take whatever it is that you have around your house, and we're just trying to elevate through the chest a bit. If it works for you to lay in this manner, just starting to find a little openness through the chest. So trying to find, again, something a little bit harder so that you can get the chest lifted. A couple options with the legs. The feet can be together. You can let the knees drop open into that butterfly position. You can have the feet flat on the ground, maybe knees falling in, if that gives you a little more support than through the lower back. Or if you want to be slightly more Shavasana-ish, you can let the legs extend out. And then again, letting the arms fall open so that chest gets a bit of broadening and opening through that space. And this is where we're going to end. So you kind of worked your way from the feet now, heading more towards chest, shoulders, through the neck even, just a bit. And so as you breathe here, softening into whatever it is you need to receive. You've had time for reflection, for noticing. And as you feel your body sink down into the support of Mother Earth, seeing if you can give yourself the freedom now to let in. Staying here as long as you need. Namaste.